Well, it's our annual meeting with MP from York Simcoe, Peter Van Loan, and we're here at the Rahvajõulupuu again, Peter. And it's kind of fitting right now. We're all here celebrating upcoming Christmas, and obviously we have troops serving in the Baltics. And how's that mission going right now?
Well, I'm very proud of what our troops are doing stationed in Latvia as part of course, a NATO-wide commitment to support all of the Baltics against the Russian threat. It's a great thing because for some time there was a perception that we couldn't do that, and I know I was instrumental, and our government was, in putting in place the framework for that to happen, and then under the new government we've been able to get the mission to actually occur with Canadian troops there as well as the other NATO countries, and that is the greatest sign that Article 5, the mutual support elements of the NATO treaty, mean something. That's the greatest security that the Baltics have in this environment of increasing threat against them. And I'm delighted that Canada's able to play a part the way they are there. I want to pay tribute to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Chrysler Freeland, who I think is one of the clearest thinking members of the government on these kind of issues. We're very lucky that she's in that post of Foreign Affairs. It's certainly an improvement from her predecessor.
We'll stay on the foreign theme for a second here. And the Prime Minister just returned from China and didn't seem to get done what he wanted to get done. I'm just wondering your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think dealing with China is a very complicated challenge. And I was trade minister and had a lot of dealings with China. Some funny stories I could tell, but I'll spare you those. But certainly the possibility of free trade talks were on the table in front of us. I made it clear, and we did succeed in getting a foreign investment protection and promotion agreement, for example, to protect Canadian investors in China. I said until we dealt with a whole bunch of irritants, that was something we weren't even going to look at. And I think you have to ask yourself, the way the Chinese system works, state-run, fairly authoritarian from that perspective, high government interference and control of the economy, even though it appears to be kind of free enterprisey, at the same time, state-owned enterprises dominate, and things are done with the Chinese national interest in mind. Does free trade with a country like that make a lot of sense, especially when there's such a strong imbalance in negotiating power, bargaining power between the two? I think the problem for Justin Trudeau, who lacks some experience on these issues, is he kind of looks at his father's legacy with opening to China, to the communists there, and he kind of wants to, I think, have his second echo of that. And it causes, without his, he doesn't really have any knowledge or experience in business in his own life. I think he's a little bit naive in how he approaches these things. We saw that here, where he was kind of showing his cards and telling the media he was going to launch free trade talks. The Chinese are great negotiators. And they said, wow, this guy's exposed himself. And we can make sure that any negotiation that happens is very much on our terms. And that's exactly what they have done. And that's bad news for Canada, and it's a sign of the weak leadership that there is on this file.
The exposure now to the Chinese and possibly the failure of getting somewhere with trade probably disadvantaged us on the deficit as well. I mean, we could have really hit some exports here and maybe done a little bit with trade.
Well, with China, I'm not sure how much upside there is. The nature of their economy and the fact that any negotiation is probably going to have more stuff flooding here than going there. We already have a huge trade imbalance with them. What's more disappointing is that probably the big win for us right now would be free trade with Japan, something that we opened up those talks under our government, and then we got into the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which included them, a whole bunch of countries other than China. And suddenly, at the last minute, when we were about to relaunch Trans-Pacific Partnership without the Americans, at the APAC talks, a side meeting, for the Canadians didn't show up. Justin Trudeau didn't even show up for what was supposed to be a signing ceremony. It was terribly embarrassing, hurt us with all our allies, but more importantly, cut us off from what was a really promising trade agreement that's essentially already been negotiated, where there are real upsides for Canada. And why was that done? Well, it's no secret that Trans-Pacific Partnership was an initiative of the Americans to have economic influence in Asia without China. This was the not China crowd. So there's a lingering suspicion, why did Trudeau not go there? Why did he avoid that agreement that apparently everyone had agreed to? Why did he not do the signing ceremony? Why did he back out of that when it's something that, essentially has already been approved by the government? and apparently they don't want to go there. The suspicion, of course, is does the effort to curry favor with China have something to do with it? Did China communicate a message there? Who's really running our foreign policy? Is it being run in Canada's interests or in the interests of China? And this is a matter of great concern to people like me and a lot of others who are familiar with these trade files.
The Americans have recently gone through some changes now in their income tax policy, trying to improve some of that. And but a lot of critics have said that what they've done in sort of trading off favorable tax policy, if they've increased their deficit by $1 trillion plus. How is Canada faring now in terms of the deficit? I know during the previous government, there was very large efforts to kind of curtail that.
We went to great lengths. After the economic downturn of 2008, we had a short but strong stimulus program that helped get Canada through the downturn with, I think, the least impact, this first economy of any of the major economies in the West to come out of it under the Harper government. And we kept that, what was the biggest global economic downturn in my lifetime, from affecting Canada too much. But it did take us still about 6 years of hard work just to get back to a balanced budget when the stimulus we used was all designed to be turned off right away, which it was. Now you've got a government that's spending without thinking, a lot of it on foreign stuff designed to maybe buy a Security Council seat. To what end, I don't know. And a lot of other kind of wasteful spending. We're all in the realm of $20 to $30 billion deficits. This year, the deficit somewhere between 20 and 30 billion, yet there's only 1.4 billion of new spending in that. It shows you how they've lost control of the steering wheel of the economy already. And how are we going to get back into a sound economic circumstance as a country? That's a real challenging problem for us. And now, with the Americans looking at potentially very significant tax reductions, including on the job creator side, we may find suddenly, when we look at all the regulations we have, especially here in Ontario, high taxes and high corporate tax, and the Liberals continuing to take runs at the small business sector and the medium business sector who they seem to think are just rich people hiding money. I think there's a real potential for a lot of that wealth, a lot of those decisions on job creation and plans to be drifting south of the border where the action is. So I'm very concerned about that.
The last thing I guess that a lot of people are starting to think about is where is the direction? What direction are we going into in terms of fiscal policy? I mean, there's been obviously with the finance minister's own personal issues and what has been raised in the House on that issue. But what is the overall direction? Where are we going to be 5 years from now?
Well, I don't think there is any clear policy coming from the Liberals. It seems that everything's driven by short-term communications hits, what'll get you a favorable news story, usually on the international realm, results in all kinds of spending without a real focus. Certainly doesn't seem to be focused on job creation or economic development. And certainly the fiscal position we're getting into, the deep debt, is a real challenge for us in the long term. That's going to be paid for by future generations. As I keep saying to people, they say, how are things going in Ottawa? I say, well, it's terrible. They're spending all your money. Well, not really. They're spending your children and your grandchildren's money. And that's the challenge that we have, not just now, but I think we're getting into one of these places where Canada is going to be affected for decades to come by heavy debt, heavy deficits, and bad policy that's put us at a job creation disadvantage.
We have some sad news to report. Bill C-323 and your private member's bill to reform the Income Tax Act to hold on to history and to protect heritage seems to have failed in committee, and I'm just wondering now there was bipartisan support for it at one point. What happened to it?
This was a bill, of course, to establish a tax credit for the restoration of heritage buildings, nationally designated historic sites and historic buildings. There's one like it in the United States, and it's actually been a great policy. It's not only been successful in regenerating, frankly, a lot of the historic downtowns of some American cities that were virtually blighted, but also at the same time creating economic growth and jobs. And I worked closely with a Liberal member, John Aldag from British Columbia, on this bill, and we managed to get enough votes from the Liberal Party to get it through second reading to committee, and as part of this bipartisanship, I turned it over to him to shepherd it through committee instead of having a Conservative shepherd it through committee. And then at the 11th hour, to my astonishment, the pressure from the Prime Minister's office and finance was so strong that the Liberals on committee, including those who said they supported the bill and had voted for it in favor, actually moved and that the bill should not be considered further. So unfortunately, Prime Minister's office and finance came down, and the bill is virtually dead at this point. So it'll be a long time before buildings like this have the opportunity to benefit from heritage credit like that. And what will frankly probably happen is we will lose a lot of our heritage in this country. We've lost a third of it in recent decades of historic valuable buildings because of the lack of incentives. The reality is restoring a heritage building costs far more than demolishing and building something new. And until we change that, if we want people to deliver a public good by preserving beautiful buildings and so on at a high cost to themselves, if we're going to ask them to pay that cost themselves, I think it's coming upon us to help out a little bit with the tax credit.
Well, Peter, we know that you believe in your heritage a lot, and we thank you for coming every year to this and to other events like Black Ribbon Day, and thank you again for representing our community in the House of Commons.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. I wish everyone all the best for a Happy New Year, and especially this Happy New Year where we're going to have the 100th anniversary of the Free Democratic Republic of Estonia.
We'll see you in February.
Thank you.